Have you met personally, face to face, with any of these people? We'll call them people.
I have not met face to face with graves, but there are many others that I have encountered. Yes, there's certainly a lot of gray. Yeah, there's certainly a lot of gray hybrids that are around, which may not notice immediately because they pass as humans, but they're actually not. So
I saw one once.
Oh, you did?
Yes. No question.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, well, I was walking up sidewalk in Santa Barbara, about 15, 16 feet wide sidewalk, very busy, lots of people. And I had a friend to the right of me. A couple of people were behind me with my daughter. And I had a feeling I was in front, a woman was to my right, behind me was a couple, and then over on my right was my daughter behind me. There was two groups. We were two, and then we were three. And I looked over my shoulder. I had this feeling to turn around and look. And I looked at my daughter, and I looked past her, and coming up behind her, walking very fast through this very busy sidewalk with traffic, was this little boy. He looked like a little boy. He looked like he was 12 years old. He had khaki pants, I'll never forget this, a green plaid shirt, and a little, like a sailor's cap, which was turned down on his head. And he had a very thin mouth, a long aquiline nose, which I looked at it, and I didn't get it right away, what was different about it, but I noticed it. And this kid's walking up, and he's staring right at me. And he must have been 15, 20 feet behind when I first turned around. I had this feeling to turn around. And he stared right at me, and I watched him. He came up next to my daughter, and he was still staring at me. And then I noticed that his nose, the top of the bridge of his nose, didn't stop between his eyes. It went up to about the lower third of his forehead. All right, imagine your nose starting up above your eyebrows. That was it. It wasn't some ghastly deformity. It looked like it was meant to be. And he was staring at me, and he obviously wasn't a normal person. Obviously very intelligent. And the next thing I know, I'm frozen. I can't move. I'm just standing there, as are the people around me. And I looked forward, and the one woman in the back said, "What is your daughter doing up there?" She was about 40 feet ahead of me, standing in this flow of traffic. People were still walking except us. And she was turned sideways and looking right into the eyes of this little 12-year-old boy. He wasn't a little 12-year-old boy. He was about 4.5 feet tall, and he was staring into her eyes. They were about 8 or 10 inches apart, and my daughter wasn't talking. She was just he was downloading her brain or something, okay? And the one woman behind me was able to break loose and ran up and grabbed my daughter and shook her and said, "What are you doing?" And the little guy, whatever it was, he simply turned and looked at me again and stared at me, and then turned and walked and headed right on up the sidewalk out of sight. My daughter, when we got up to her, I finally was able to walk. She said, "Did you see his eyes, Dad? Did you see his eyes?" And I said, "Yes." And we all walked on to the car. We were heading home after having dinner, and nobody in our group of 5 said one word about the event or the encounter. Not a word. We got in the car, drove home. It wasn't discussed. You've heard that format, I'm sure, many times. But that's my encounter with something that wasn't normal.
I would ask you 1 or 2 questions about that. Was the event never discussed because they didn't remember it, or because they just didn't want to talk about it?
I think they didn't want to talk about it. It was too strange. I think one person said that was really strange, and that was it. That was it. It wasn't as if they were shut down. It's just that it wasn't something that they felt. No one wanted to talk about it. It was odd. Does that make sense to you, that encounter?
Yeah, definitely. Greys are notorious when they stare at you. They have how should I say, well, the closest thing to say it's very hypnotic, but it's actually far deeper than that and far more sinister than that.
Oh, I agree.
And
no, that
it's
was
something to be very cautious about.
I didn't have a chance. I mean, I was just stopped. And he had something to do with my daughter. I don't know what it was, but it's not the first encounter she had with a visitor, from my understanding.
It's possible that you and your daughter are Rh negative yourselves.
I don't know.
That would explain the interest. Because the aliens, like Graves, would not be interested in you if you weren't Rh negative.
Well, okay. He was. I looked at them, and they were, to me, from my perspective, my daughter was on the left, and this little guy was on the right. She was taller than he was, 4 or 5 inches maybe at the most, but he was really riveted into her eyes. I don't know what was going on, but there was information being transmitted and transferred. I obviously something was going on there. What it was, I never knew.
I think there's a lot for you to explore should you choose to explore it. And the first step in exploring it would be to get a blood test from someone who can verify that you and your daughter are Rh negative, and that would start to explain a lot of this.
Okay, I'll check into it. I will.
Just a thought.
Very good. Yeah, no, good idea. Can you get an Rh negative blood test and pick it up at like a pharmacy or something and just do a little pin prick and send it in?
No, there may be some lab that does that, but I haven't heard of it. I'm not even sure if hospitals officially check for it. I can almost guarantee that they unofficially check for it, but I don't know if they officially check for it anymore like they did when I was born, where it would be on your documentation.
Right. Well, interesting. That happened about 8:30 in the evening on a summer evening on the sidewalk in Santa Barbara, and there was another event. I shouldn't even talk about this, but I think it fits. And she would go visit her mother occasionally, and the mother had an upstairs downstairs townhouse-like rental, and there were 2 bedrooms upstairs, and my daughter would stay in her room upstairs, and I would go pick her up after the weekend visit, and bring her home. And one time I was bringing her home. I've never told anyone this. And she's in the back seat, strapped in with her seatbelt in her car seat. She's about 6. And I said, "Did you have a fun weekend?" "Oh, yeah. What did you do?" "Well, I played with my friend." I said, "Oh, you have a friend in the building." There's a complex of 10, 12 units, something like that, 2-bedroom units. And remember, this is upstairs. And I said, "What did you do? Did you go swimming?" No. He just came over and we played and we read books. And I said, "Really? Where did this happen? Where was your mother?" "Oh, she was downstairs or asleep or something. I don't know." And I said, "Where did this happen?" She said, "In my room upstairs." So I said, "He came to the front door and she let him in, right?" No. I said, "Well, I don't understand. How did he get in your room?" He said, "Oh, he came through the window. There's no stairs up on the outside. He came through the glass."
Well, Jeff, I'll tell you that she has had many more experiences with them than these. And Greys, they will come right through the walls. The technology they have is incredible relative to what we would imagine. And I'm sure she has had many experiences with them. It's just these are the only ones that you have heard about or remembered, because it's very easy for them to delete the memories, or what they do is they implant what are known as screen memories. So you're given a substitute memory to cover up the actual memory. So if I had to bet money on it, I would say your daughter is Rh negative, and she is of great interest to them genetically, and that's why she has these experiences. And I think it's not a surprise that you suddenly, for the first time, talk about this, because it's probably the right moment, and it does indeed fit in with the contents of this book, as you have said.
Yeah, I had my own experience as about a 12-year-old kid, which I don't want to go into now, but it was very strange.